This is where everything else gets pushed aside, everybody. Like I said, where we rediscover our own cultural strengths. I cannot think of a better show to have for you today than to revisit our good friend on this show, the Purple Rose Theater Company, in one of my favorite towns anywhere, Chelsea, Michigan. You'll recall that a couple of months ago, back in March, we highlighted Paul Stroiley's fabulous play, My Mother and the Michigan-Ohio War. And I want to thank Caitlin Cavanaugh for that, who's an actress, also very accomplished actress. She even played Carrie Campbell. I was just blown away by that production. What amazes me about The Purple Rose is, number one, it underscores the importance of regional theater, particularly in these times, and reminds us that we are all creative entities. Talk about inspiration. This is it. This is the springboard. Tag, you're it. You know, you go to the next thing. I'm going to write that story. I'm going to write an editorial. I'm going to pick up a brush and take a watercolors class. Whatever it is, if you make that transition, you've gotten the message. Not just of this little show. You've gotten the message of all the great guests that we've had. And that came through, I think, very loud and clearly with Paul for that fabulous play. What amazes me, number two, about The Purple Rose is that they are able to put so many fantastic productions in the pipeline, one right after the other. The next one, which is going to be opening up, which we're going to be highlighting today on June 20th, is Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet, a play by the renowned playwright and actor Matt Letcher. We have two guests today. And just for I think for the clarity and just for the discussion and everything, that it would be easier to have each of our guests taking up one of the portions of the show. So we are going to begin with the very distinguished actress Maria Ru-djen, who plays the nurse in this fabulous play. This ostensibly a comedy, I think you would say. Maria has a fabulous resume as a performer, beginning with Mornings at 7. That was back in 2016. She has understudied many productions there at the Purple Rose. She also understudied the role, interesting enough, of Izzy in My Mother and the Michigan-Ohio War, which was played by Terry Clark Linden. That alone would be a discussion, because I don't think I've seen a play in a long time where the keystone actor in it had more lines that were delivered so perfectly. The timing was fantastic, and Maria Ru-djen was the understudy for Terry in that. And also with Jeff Daniels in his production of Office Christmas Party, Grinch and Fight with Rudolph, Police Called, which was such an event here in the whole area. Also the Lakeside Theater productions of I Remember Mama and The Heiress, two traditional productions, just to show just a little bit of the virtuosity of this actor. Very interestingly for me, because as you know, everybody, I have long said that I think that actors make the best English teachers. The value of language, their ability to deliver it, the ability to bring in nuance and to make us fascinated. With her work, with Maria's work in Snapshot Storytelling, which is Snapshot Stories of Life, sponsored by the Pencil Point Theater. She is also a proud recipient of the Audiophile Earphones Award for her audiobook narration of After Oz by wonderful actor, the great writer, the late Gordon McAlpine. If you have not read After Oz, everybody, which is what happens after Dorothy returns to Kansas, you are really missing something. And our fabulous first guest, Maria Ru-djen, is going to be recounting all this and bringing us back to Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet. Maria Ru-djen, welcome to Speaking of Art.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I am delighted to have you here. Congratulations for, I believe, your first principal starring role at the Purple Rose, in this wonderful role as the nurse in Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet by Matt Letcher. What a thing to be able to have achieved there with your long association with the Purple Rose. It's wonderful cast, it's wonderful staff. What is this like? I mean, it seems like a comedy, but like so much Purple Rose, produces, there's always a profound message that is conveyed through the comedy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, for the most part, it is a comedy, but like you said, it touches upon the human experience and its ups and its downs, and there's some really heartfelt moments in it as well. But I do think it's just going to be a treat for audiences, especially watching the actors that are performing as the animals. It's
Yes.
really been quite something already during the rehearsal process, watching them transform and play around and explore how to effectively portray an animal on stage.
The Purple Rose Theater, just structurally, the way it is, I think lends itself perfectly to this play, to Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet. The fact that you have the audience on three sides, and so you see it in the round, and the actors see the audience in the round.
Yes.
And I think for this particular play, of course, the comedic elements, the pathos, the whole thing that's here, we're going to talk about the whole setup for this. It's wonderful. But do you think that the way the Purple Rose is particularly amenable to this type of play, in this case by Matt Letcher?
Oh, I think so. We can get very, very close to members of the audience. And I know you said you experienced My Mother in the Michigan-Ohio War, where Terry was right out in the right out there in the audience with you, talking to people, interacting with people. Now, this play doesn't have that, but there is that wonderful intimacy of the Purple Rose, where you really feel as if you are in the room where the action is happening.
I've got to ask you, I've got to dovetail what you've just said with just an observation for me. When you're talking to a professional actor, you always have to remember that they completely submerge themselves in the role for whatever period of time it is, usually a little over 2 months for a Purple Rose production, and then they go to the next role. You understudied for My Mother in the Michigan-Ohio War, and you brought that unbelievably complicated in terms of just the plethora of dialogue in that whole story of those three people, that insular family working out their problems, and carrying on a heritage that they had sort of like essentially been dumped on them. How do you leave that and then almost immediately go into, say, rehearsals for Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet, which is going to be opening on June 20th, but you're in heavy rehearsals right now. Rhiannon Ragland is the director. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. How do you make that switch? Do you decompress at all, or do you not need to, or how do you transition?
Well, we actually had a week of overlap, which often happens at the Purple Rose, where one show is closing and another show has begun rehearsal. And every once in a while, there are a few of us that are caught in that overlap, like this one, where I still have My Mother in the Michigan-Ohio War loud and clear in my head. For obvious reasons, I have to be ready to go on should anything happen. But at the same time, switching gears and jumping into something else. It's a little bit like patting your head and rubbing your stomach.
Yeah. I tell you, I take my hat off because I've had the privilege to be able to speak with, I would say, quite a few actors, directors, playwrights, even producers on the show over these many years. But the one thing that always comes home to me is that I could never really do this. It's a story. It is a life of constant creativity that I always try to wrap my arms around, and I'm privileged to be able to discuss it. But it's like some sports and stuff. You enjoy it, but you don't know all the rules. I can't quite understand how you really do it. And going from My Mother in the Michigan-Ohio War to this, tell us a little bit about Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet. Bring us in to the vet's office. It seems like we're living in the world now where veterinarians are really having their renaissance. Just about anybody you say, they're studying medicine or whatever, people are becoming vets. Mm-hmm. I meet them all the time. A few are very good friends. It seems that everything is sprouting up veterinarian practices right now. What is going on at this vet's office with these particular animals?
Well, this is an office that has in-house pets. So they have animals that are there in the office that people come in and meet and get to know, and they bring their animals in. So the two dogs, Bert and Trixie, are familiar with the animals, but then they meet a new one. The cat is a new arrival, and so that adds some interest and a little bit of tension when the dogs meet the cat for the first time. But the role that I play, the nurse, is someone who cares for the animals at the vet's office, and she's very attached to them and understands animals, and in some ways perhaps is probably more comfortable dealing with animals than with human beings, and that kind of comes out in the script as well.
And we hear about that, quite a lot. That the animals are a refuge environment for her. So in other words, the animals that are there, the house animals, they kind of acclimate from veterinarians I've known, always referring to the animals that they are working with as their patients. So the new patients come in, and you've got these, again, household actors, so to speak, acclimating them to the environment, maybe trying to, bring down the tension level a little bit. But things go a little bit awry, as you said, with the arrival of the cat.
Right. And then, of course, the story is they think something might be seriously wrong with one of the dogs. And so the animals decide it's better to escape than deal with the question of what may or may not happen. And so it's an escape play. I think Matt described it as Escape from Alcatraz, but without Clint Eastwood.
Or Patrick, I think Patrick McGowan, is the warden, if I remember correctly. Oh my gosh, that's true. You know what? I love this plot because it's so contemporary to today. Also, the idea where they are relatively comfortable because they are household pets. They have a job. They're in a secure environment, and these other animal patients, they come and go, and they try to do their best to make them comfortable. They realize that they are at a hinge moment, and they cannot be in that kind of a position anymore. They become very active, and they resist in their way. They go outside themselves and what is expected of them, in fact, even endangering themselves to help someone else or a patient. Do I have that right?
Yeah. So they conspire an escape plan. They try and figure out how to get free. And I think that's part of the message of the play. What does it mean to be free? And who is your family? And where does your love go? It's really quite sweet.
Is this with the cast? And I love this about the Purple Rose. I'm a huge fan of solo plays, and going all the way back to Hal Holbrook as Mark Twain, or James Whitmore as Truman, and Give Him Hell, Harry, and all that. I love the courage of the actor who can be up there alone and go through a whole production and keep you spellbound. And I think related to that, I love limited cast productions. We saw that with My Mother and the Michigan-Ohio War and stuff. We have essentially the same situation here. Are there particular challenges, Maria, from your experience being an actor? All acting is ensemble acting, but the idea of being with a limited cast where I guess you're always on, but you're really on with just a few people on stage at the same time, as opposed to a wider cast. Does it call on different talents as an actor and sensitivities, for want of a better word, on your part to be able to fulfill those roles?
Oh, I think so. I think each type of play, each type of experience requires us to utilize different skills. I spent many summers doing community theater where we did big musicals, and you were sort of number 5 way in the back. And the kind of relationships and connections that you're able to develop with a cast of, thousands is very different than the experience of working with just a small handful of people. And I do love the way Rhiannon runs rehearsals. We are very involved with each other physically. We're sort of going through a movement boot camp, if you will. She's very movement based, and with the animal parts, of course, of exploring how to convey the animals without necessarily ending up crawling around on your hands and feet, but how do you, as a human being, convey I am a cat or I am a dog while being able to stand up and walk around or be in different positions that look more human at first?
That almost seems like, kind of like the mantra of like any acting boot camp that you can think of. I mean, okay, you're a dog now, and you have to convince me that you are. You'd already mentioned, Rhiannon Ragland, this fabulous actor, choreographer, and director
Yes.
at the Purple Rose, a resident artist. What is it like? Well, you'd given us a little bit of that. You say that they're very, very active rehearsals and all that. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that entails? Because you're at this for a long time before June 20th.
Mm-hmm.
What are these encounters like? What is hammered home all the time? What essentially is being worked out? Is it the pacing, it's the timing of the lines, the comedy and all that? Does she have a certain way of working that actors find particularly amenable?
Oh, well, I've been able to work with her a few times now, and I think what I always take away from the experience is how committed she is to our growth, our positive experience as an artist. She wants us to feel comfortable in the discomfort, that we can trust each other, that we can trust ourselves, that we can let go and feel free to explore and try things and maybe just kind of step out of our comfort zone, knowing that we're in a very safe environment, a respectful environment, where I can trust my colleagues to have my back 100%. I'm sure you've seen this many, many times at the Purple Rose. You have to have an incredible amount of trust with your fellow actors, and she helps create that atmosphere from day one in the rehearsal room. Yeah. You feel safe, and you feel like, okay, I can do my work here and try on new things and try different things.
That's wonderful. You really beautifully explained, Maria, a quote by Rhiannon that I particularly like. She said in a wonderful article that came out, I think, last February, was one of the things, and she says this, she said, one of the things that regional theaters open up to artists is that you don't have to be just one thing. If you find a theater that's a good home, like the Purple Rose has been for me and others, they will advocate for you. You don't have to be just one thing. You can be anything you want to be, which is a lot of fun. What you were describing seems to be her directing style within that quote. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, she creates an atmosphere where anything goes. And yet you also feel like there are parameters out there where, okay, at a certain point, if you feel unsafe, you can express that. You can say, this makes me uncomfortable, or we check in with each other daily. How are you doing? Well, my back hurts, or I'm having a hard time at home, or whatever it might be. We have an opportunity to share that and acknowledge it and then get on with the work together.
Ladies and gentlemen, our fabulous guest for the first half hour is Maria Ru-djen, distinguished actor and appearing as the nurse in Matt Letcher's latest play, Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet, which is going to be premiering on June 20th and running through August 31st at the Great Purple Rose Theater Company there at 137 Park Street in downtown Chelsea, one of the most pleasant places. Not only if you live in Chelsea, that's great. If you live outside and you're driving to it, it's always a wonderful journey knowing that you're going to be going into that environment and into the world of these different actors. Maria, one thing about your vast background in acting that I particularly liked is the maybe because I'm in radio or something, is the nuance that you give to your recordings. And I was wondering if you could say something about that. I was very interested to learn that you had won the Audiophile Earphones Award for your narration of After Oz by Gordon McAlpine. What a fabulous book to have been able to read. I imagine that you are an actor who is very aware of the way that you are that you are elucidating or with your lines, the emotion and the nuance that you give to every line and even the words. Has that training, do you think, been particularly beneficial to you when you were live on stage?
Oh, I think so. I think there is a difference between, sitting in my little closet sound booth recording a book all by myself, and then can't think of a better word other than magic, the magic of being in a theater live with an audience, experiencing whatever it is that they happen to experience on that given day of that particular performance. It's just completely energizing. And I think the difference for me is imagining when I'm reading a book, who is listening and what are their reactions as if we were in a theater together. And sometimes it helps to think of a particular person. Well, I'm talking to my sister, or I'm talking to my friend, or thinking of a specific person that might be enjoying the story. Those are all considerations that I've had when I've recorded books.
That's beautifully said, and what you bring in your stage performances also. If you find, like say, on one night's performance, a Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet, beginning on June 20th at the Purple Rose, and you realize you want to do something a little different with it, can you do it just the other night? You say, I think I'm going to say it a little differently this time. I think I'm going to put a pause in the line or whatever. Do you work all that out with Rhiannon beforehand, or do you have the freedom just to kind of like push, that particular scene a little bit with with those lines a little differently because you think they might work a little bit more effectively another night? In other words, are you sort of like you're changing, you're improving, you're editing a little bit, as you go? Do you have that freedom?
Well, much of the performance is what we call locked in at opening night, so that we understand blocking and those sorts of things, so that we can trust that the performance that we give is the same quality consistently throughout the entire run. Now, having said that, there's a different audience. There's a different mood.
Right.
I might be in a different place one day. And I do believe that Rhiannon and the folks at the Purple Rose acknowledge that we come into the theater perhaps a little bit different on Thursday than we were on Wednesday. And that is going to potentially shape our performance within the parameters that we've established in a rehearsal. So certainly there are times where something happens on stage and it's different than it was the night before, and you just go with it. And I think that's where that trust becomes so critical, that my fellow performers know, oh, she's doing it a little bit different, and I know they're going to get it, and we can move through it together within the parameters, like I said, that we've established within the rehearsal process.
I find that fascinating, that the continuing art within the art itself. As you say, it's set, but there is margin though for certain changes, and your fellow actors they sort of like go along with it. I mean, that's what being professional really is about. Wow. Maria Ru-djen, I thank you so very much for being on Speaking of Art, talking about this wonderful play. By the way, did you get to meet with Matt Letcher, and does he explain it a little bit? Is he sort of a playwright who wants you to be able to capture a certain ambiance a certain way, or does he give you the freedom also to interpret?
Well, he was with us for the first few rehearsals, and it was just wonderful having him there and experiencing his, oh, you know what, I'm going to change this word, or we're going to do this line a little bit different, or here's a new page of dialogue. And I love that part of working on new plays at the Purple Rose, is being in that sort of it's changeable, it's happening, it's being created right there at the moment, and that's so exciting. But like most playwrights, he lets go and says, all right, these are my words, but it's up to you to, bring them to life.
Maria Ru-djen, thank you so much for being on Speaking of Art. It is a true pleasure being able to speak with you, and I look forward to the opportunity. I hope to be able to invite you on again and have another great conversation. Congratulations for your role as the nurse in Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet by Matt Letcher there at the Purple Rose beginning on June 20th, running through August 31st. More about that, but Maria, thank you so much.